paradrama tales.
I agreed to an open marriage. I agreed to honesty, boundaries, and shared decisions. But I never agreed to walk into my living room and find my wife with my nephew. There's open, and then there's betrayal. And now, I'm not sure which part of this hurts more. People hear open marriage, and they assume chaos. They assume we were reckless, selfish, or bored. They assume it was a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. But the truth is, for us, it wasn't like that at all. It started with conversations, long, uncomfortable, sometimes circular. It started with honesty, real, sometimes painful honesty, about needs we couldn't pretend didn't exist, about curiosity and intimacy, and the fact that monogamy, for us, wasn't always synonymous with loyalty. We laid out rules, not on a whim, not carelessly, but carefully. No personal friends, no coworkers, no family, obviously. No one who would ever sit at our dinner table. And most importantly, always tell the truth. Transparency wasn't optional, it was the entire point. There was no sneaking, no secrets, no coming home with lipstick on a shirt and an apology wrapped in lies. If something happened, it was talked about beforehand, or not at all. It worked for years, not flawlessly, but with clarity. There were missteps, sure. Jealousy didn't vanish just because we gave it a name. But we always came back to the same foundation. This only works if we protect each other first. And she used to say that. My wife. She'd say, at the end of the day, it's you and me. Always. That was our North Star. Our compass. So, when people asked how we made it work, I'd answer the same way every time. Boundaries. We didn't open the marriage to fall apart. We opened it because we trusted each other enough not to. I think that's why this hurts so much. Because it wasn't a stranger this time. It wasn't someone from a weekend getaway or a carefully vetted conversation. It wasn't something we agreed on. There were no check-ins, no safe words, no mutual understanding. It was my nephew, 19, still figuring out his place in the world, staying with us because he trusted me, because I was the one he called when life got confusing and hard. He was family. And in our rulebook, family wasn't just off limits. It was sacred, and she knew that. She knew it in the way we both flinched when setting that rule. She knew it in the way I looked at that kid like a younger brother, not just a guest on our couch. She knew exactly how far she crossed the line the second she saw my face that night. So no, this isn't about whether open marriages work. This isn't about what we allowed. It's about what we never, ever did. We never brought family into it. We never blurred that boundary. We never made space for betrayal to wear the mask of consent. Because what happened wasn't part of the arrangement. It was an implosion of it. And now, the framework we built, those careful, honest conversations, those boundaries we protected like glass, feels shattered. Not because the rules were unclear, but because someone I trusted the most decided they no longer applied. He wasn't supposed to be here long, just a few weeks, maybe a month, enough time for him to get back on his feet, figure some things out, catch his breath between whatever it is that adulthood throws at you when you're 19 and lost. He needed space, and we had it, that's all. He was polite, grateful, eager to help. The kind of kid who asks before opening the fridge and offers to carry in groceries without being asked. It felt good to give him a safe place to land. And truth be told, I liked having him around. It reminded me of what it meant to show up for family, and at first, it really was that simple. But homes are strange things. They absorb energy in a way you can't always name. And slowly I began to feel something shift. It started small, a laugh that lingered too long between them, a glance across the kitchen that seemed too familiar, inside jokes I wasn't part of, late-night conversations that continued after I'd gone to bed. None of it screamed trouble. It whispered it. I told myself not to overthink. That closeness wasn't a crime, that my wife had always been warm, disarming, easy to talk to, and that maybe he just needed someone to talk to who wasn't me. But even still, I noticed. The way she'd tilt her head when he spoke, like she was trying to memorize his face. The way he started staying up later and later, always in the room she was in. The way I began to feel like a third wheel in my own living room. I chalked it up to tension, to stress, to proximity. This was still our home, still our life, just with an extra body in the mix. But something about the rhythm had changed. The house felt louder, even when it was quiet. I started coming home with a strange sense of dread, not because I expected anything, but because I no longer felt certain of what I'd walk into. It's a bizarre thing, realizing that the dynamic has shifted, but not being able to name it, you doubt your instincts. You ask yourself if you're being paranoid, if you're projecting, if maybe you're just getting old, and the world moves on, and people connect in ways you don't always understand. And that's the trap, because while you're busy giving people the benefit of the doubt, they're making choices you'd never imagine in their silence. Looking back now, I don't know when the line was crossed. I don't know if it was a moment or 1,000 moments stacked quietly on top of one another. What I do know is this: there were 3 people in that house, but only 2 of them saw the shift as something they wanted. And I wasn't one of them. I wasn't supposed to be home early. It was one of those work things that drags on. Meet and greets, small talk, wine in plastic cups. I left before dessert, told them I was feeling tired, which wasn't a lie. But part of me just wanted to be home, quiet, familiar, my space. The house was dark when I walked in, not pitch black, just dim. One lamp in the living room was on, casting that warm, soft light that usually means everything's fine. Except that night, it wasn't. I dropped my keys gently, out of habit, kicked off my shoes, no sounds, no TV, no music, no chatter, just stillness. I headed to the bedroom, expecting to see her already asleep, maybe a book on her chest, the soft rise and fall of breath. But the bed was empty. I paused, not panicked, just confused. Maybe she was in the bathroom, maybe getting a snack. Or maybe she and my nephew had stayed up late again, talking, laughing. I walked down the hallway and turned the corner, and there they were, not mid-act, not wrapped in anything explicit. But it didn't have to be. They were on the couch, her shirt half-buttoned, his posture frozen. The air around them was so thick I could feel it in my teeth. She jumped up immediately like she'd been caught stealing from the altar. His face, pale, ashamed, terrified, told me everything before she could even say a word. And I just stood there, no yelling, no fists, no shattered glass, just me, staring at 2 people I trusted, trying to make sense of a silence so loud it made my ears ring. She started crying instantly, the kind of crying that comes from guilt, not pain. He said nothing, couldn't even look at me, just sat there like a child who finally realized the fire he lit wasn't going to go out. I didn't ask questions. I didn't demand details. Because some betrayals don't need explanation. They carry their truth in the way a room stops breathing. I walked back to the bedroom and shut the door. She followed later with apologies and shaking hands. She said it was a mistake, that they'd been drinking, that it was the proximity, the strangeness of the house lately, the way he looked at her, like someone who didn't see her as a wife, but as a woman. I listened, but I wasn't really hearing, because all I could think about was the couch, that same couch where we'd opened Christmas gifts, where we'd eaten takeout, where we once dreamed up names for children we never had. Now it was just a crime scene, and nothing would ever feel clean again. I've been cheated on before. Years ago, a different relationship, a different version of me. It hurt. Of course it did. But it was a clean kind of pain. A line had been crossed and the exit was obvious. You grieve, you leave, you rebuild. But this wasn't clean, because this wasn't just about sex. It wasn't just about my wife stepping outside the marriage. It was about who she crossed the line with, and what that meant. This wasn't just betrayal from my partner. It was betrayal from my blood. He's my nephew, 19. Still awkward when he speaks too fast. Still figuring out who he is. I've known him since he was in diapers. I held him the day he was born. I remember helping him with math homework, showing him how to drive, letting him crash on my couch when things got hard at home. I never saw him as just a kid in the family tree. He was more than that. He was mine, in that quiet, protective way uncles sometimes claim their nephews. He trusted me, looked up to me, and I trusted him enough to let him stay in my home, eat at my table, sleep under my roof, and she knew that. She knew what he meant to me. She knew what it would destroy, and she did it anyway. People talk about infidelity like it's a matter between 2 people, the partner who strayed and the one left behind. But this tore through something bigger. It severed something ancestral, something sacred. Family is supposed to be where the lines are clearest. You don't sleep with blood. You don't betray your own house. You don't take what was never yours. especially when it was given to you freely with love. When I walked into that room, I didn't just lose a marriage. I lost two people I thought would never hurt me like this. And the worst part? Neither of them really knows what they did. They keep saying things like, "It was a mistake. We didn't mean to. It wasn't planned." But betrayal doesn't need a blueprint. It just needs silence and proximity and two people willing to forget, for a moment, who they are and who I was to them. She crossed a marital line. He crossed a family one. And now I'm left standing in the ashes of both, wondering if there's a word strong enough to describe what it feels like when the two people you trusted the most trust each other more than they ever trusted you. This wasn't infidelity, this was desecration. And forgiveness? I don't even know where to begin looking for that. She apologized, over and over, whispered, broken, shaking. The kind of apology that clings to your shirt when you turn away. The kind that wants you to believe it wasn't just wrong, it was unlike her. That she's still the same woman I married, that this wasn't who she really is. But the thing about apologies is, they don't unwrite the story. They just underline the ending. And the moment I saw her on that couch, in that light, with him, I knew. No matter how many times she said, "I'm sorry," the version of her I used to love, without suspicion, was gone. She said it started small, late-night conversations, vague emotional confusion. She said she didn't know how it got there. She said it was the alcohol, the tension, the isolation, the blurred lines. She said she hated herself for it, that if she could undo it, she would. I believed her, not because I wanted to, but because I think that part was real. Regret often is. But regret isn't redemption. And a broken vase doesn't care how sorry you are. It's still shattered. My nephew, on the other hand, didn't say much. He didn't cry. He didn't defend himself. He just stood there in the kitchen that morning, backpack already packed, looking 10 years older than he had the week before. "I should go," he said. I didn't stop him. Because what do you say to the boy who used to call you for advice? When now, the only thing left to say is, "You were supposed to be safe here." And the aftershock? It's quiet. It's the kind of silence that hums beneath everything. When the house still smells like her shampoo. When the couch is still there, unchanged, like nothing happened. When the coffee still brews at 7 a.m. because the machine doesn't know it's just me now. People think heartbreak is loud. It's not. It's brushing your teeth next to an empty sink. It's two toothbrushes still standing in the cup, like they don't know the story changed. It's hearing your phone buzz and hoping, irrationally, that it's something else. A different version of the story. A past you can climb back into. But it never is. And the worst part? There was no screaming, no slamming doors, no names thrown across the room. Just apologies, just silence. Just two people who forgot who they were to me. And now want me to forget that they did. So, yes, she's sorry. Yes, he's sorry. But I've learned something I didn't know before. Sometimes a mistake isn't a crack in the foundation. It's the moment you realize the entire house was built on sand. In the days that followed, I kept turning one thought over in my head, like a stone in my palm. Was this my fault too? Not in the way she meant it. Not in the way he didn't say it. But in the way that guilt creeps in when the dust settles and no one else is left to carry the weight. I was the one who said yes to an open marriage. I was the one who said we could explore, trust, stretch the boundaries of what love meant. I was the one who laid down the rules, and maybe in some way helped make the idea of boundaries feel negotiable. And when I let my nephew stay with us, I didn't think about the potential for danger. Not like that. Why would I? He was family, she was my wife, we were adults, we had structure, we had trust. But trust, I've come to realize, is a fragile thing, not just in how it's broken, but in how it's placed. Because when you extend it too far, when you believe that structure can hold under all weight, sometimes you don't see the cracks until something slips through. So, yes, part of me wonders if I should have seen it coming. If I should have said something when the late-night talk started, when the shared laughter felt just a little too private, when I felt that distant hum of something shifting, and told myself not to overreact. But there's a difference between trust and denial, and I was trusting, because I believed in what we'd built. And still, I ask myself, was I complicit? Not in the act, but in the silence that led to it. Did I make openness mean something it wasn't supposed to? Did I let love become so flexible it bent out of shape? Did I confuse permission with permission to forget the human cost? It's a dangerous path, that line of thinking, because guilt is seductive. It gives you something to hold when you feel powerless. It whispers, if it's your fault, then at least you could have stopped it. But here's what I know now. Consent has limits, trust has context, and openness doesn't mean erasing the difference between freedom and betrayal. What we agreed to, the kind of marriage we had, was never about chaos. It was about control, communication, intention. What happened with her and him? That wasn't a failure of the arrangement, that was a failure of character. Because even in an open relationship, there are sacred things. And family? Family was supposed to be one of them. So, no, I won't carry this guilt. I won't wear it like penance for someone else's collapse in judgment. I won't call it my complicity when it was their choice, not mine, to cross the one line that needed no further clarification. They knew better, and they did it anyway. That's not my guilt to hold, and I'm finally learning to let it go. She keeps asking me to forgive her. It's become a refrain now, soft, desperate, sometimes whispered through tears, sometimes wrapped in promises of change. I'll do anything, she says. I just want to fix this. And I believe that she means it. But that's the thing about forgiveness. It's not just about meaning it. It's about what comes after. Because if I forgive her, what exactly am I stepping back into? A marriage that now holds a permanent shadow? A house that echoes every time I walk into the living room? A relationship where my trust has to be rebuilt, not brick by brick, but atom by atom. People talk about forgiveness like it's a healing act. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it's a trap. Sometimes forgiveness becomes the leash you put around your own neck, a quiet agreement to stay wounded, so the person who cut you doesn't feel too far away. Sometimes forgiveness isn't a bridge, it's a cage. Because here's what she's really asking. She's not asking me to forget. She's asking me to live with it, to carry it, to make space for this betrayal inside our future, as if it were just another shared memory we could soften over time. But I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to be held by the same hands that broke something sacred. I don't know how to look at her face without seeing his next to it, blurred by guilt and moonlight and the weight of everything they didn't stop. Forgiveness would mean choosing her again, but choosing her would also mean choosing this version of us, the one where he existed between us, where silence sat at the dinner table, where every small act of closeness would be haunted by the question, are we pretending this didn't happen? Or are we just surviving it? She says she'll earn it, that she'll prove I can trust her again. But trust isn't something you earn back like a lost job or a missed opportunity. Trust is either intact or it's altered, and mine, it's altered beyond recognition. So I sit with her apologies, I nod, I listen, but what she doesn't understand is this. I'm not holding out because I want to punish her. I'm holding back because I'm trying to protect the part of me that still remembers how to feel safe. And that part isn't ready to open the door again. Because sometimes forgiveness doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like volunteering to live with the wreckage, just so someone else can stop feeling bad. And I've done enough of that already. People think trust breaks like glass. One sharp shatter, and it's done. But that's not how it happens. No, trust is more like thread. It frays first. You feel it before you see it, in the way you second-guess a glance, in the way a silence becomes suspicious, in the way I love you starts to sound like a question instead of a truth. And then one day, like the night I walked into that room, it snaps. Not just between me and her, between me and the whole idea of us. Because trust, real trust, is built on the belief that the person you love will protect what's sacred to you, even when no one's watching. That night showed me she couldn't. And worse, that she didn't. There were choices leading up to that moment, laughs exchanged, doors left open. Lines moved inch by inch until they were unrecognizable, and no one stopped. No one pulled back. No one asked, "What are we doing?" That's what trust can't survive. The absence of resistance where there should have been loyalty. It wasn't the physical act that ended something inside me. It was the emotional permission that preceded it. Because when someone you love walks into a mistake with their eyes open, What are you supposed to believe after that? That they didn't know better? Or that they did, and didn't care enough to stop? She says it was a moment of weakness, that it didn't mean anything. But trust doesn't care about meaning. It cares about integrity. It cares about the moments you choose to be better than your impulse. Not because anyone's watching, but because someone believes in you enough to think you would. I believed in her like that. And now I can't anymore. I've tried. God, I've tried. I've imagined us in counseling. I've pictured us rebuilding slowly. I've even sat with the fantasy of this all being a terrible dream, the kind that vanishes with the morning light. But then I walk into the living room. The couch is still there. The light still hits the floor in the same way. And I remember, that's where it changed. That's where the thread snapped. And the thing about thread is, once it breaks, you can tie it back together. But it's never the same length, never as strong, never invisible again. Some people can live with that. Some call it growth, forgiveness, maturity. But me, I call it limping. And I don't want to limp through the rest of my marriage. So I stopped asking how we could fix this, and started asking what it says about me if I stay. Because love is not supposed to cost you your clarity. And once trust has been traded for confusion, what exactly is left to hold on to? I haven't made a big declaration. There was no screaming match, no dramatic suitcase by the door, no ultimatums or closing speeches, just a quiet decision made over time. One morning, one breath, one painful realization at a time. I'm leaving. Not because I want revenge, not because I want to punish her, not because I think it will undo anything, but because staying would mean building a life around something I no longer believe in. And the truth is, I want more than survival. I want peace. I want clarity. I want to walk into my own living room and not feel like I'm interrupting a memory I can't erase. For a while, I thought maybe forgiveness was the higher road. That healing meant returning, rebuilding, being the bigger person. But I've come to understand something else. Sometimes the higher road is the lonelier one. Sometimes it's not about saving the relationship. It's about saving yourself from what the relationship turned you into. A man who doubts his instincts. A man who watches every smile with suspicion. A man who tiptoes around a version of intimacy that no longer feels safe. I don't want to be that man. I want to be the man I was before betrayal became part of my vocabulary. And maybe that version of me won't come back all at once. But he's waiting, somewhere beyond this house, beyond this silence, beyond this story. So, to anyone listening, if you've been sitting in the aftermath and unsure if you're allowed to walk away, you are. If someone's asking you to forgive what you can't forget, you're not heartless for saying no. And if you've been told that love means staying no matter what, let me be the one to say it. It doesn't. Love should stretch. It should evolve. But it should never shrink you to fit someone else's mistake. So if this story reached something in you, if it mirrored a moment you've lived or a pain you've carried, I hope you'll stay. Stay with this channel, stay with this space, share your voice, comment, subscribe, be part of the community that doesn't pretend betrayal is easy or clean, but knows that healing doesn't always come from holding on. Sometimes it comes from letting go, not in anger, not in fear, but in dignity. And sometimes that's the most loving thing you'll ever do.